Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we want to cover some DS stuff we missed because there's just so many games on the DS that there's no way for us to hit all of the good ones. So we got some letters to read here, and then we're gonna dive into a little bit of history on the PlayStation Portable after that.
Yeah, and we're going to definitely do a two-parter on the PlayStation Portable because I'm traveling and this is really difficult. I'm sorry. We're going to keep going. It's all my fault, listener. Don't blame Tyler, blame me. So we got an email from Matt in Japan, and it's a long email. He even said long warning. This is a long email. And it is, but it's a great email. And so I'm going to read tidbits of it, and I'm going to paraphrase pieces of it because if I try to just read it verbatim, I'm going to mess it up, and then I'm going to feel like a ding-dong. So here we go. First off, Matt says, this wasn't mentioned in your history of the DS podcast, but the original launch versions of the DS came with a pack-in game called Metroid Prime Hunters First Hunt. Have you heard of this, Tyler?
I can't believe I didn't mention that because I meant to talk about that. Dang it.
So, and this was a demo for Metroid Prime Hunters, and the full game was released about a year and a half later, and it wasn't a traditional Metroid Prime game, but rather a disjointed linear first-person shooter that emphasized shooting more than exploration. The game had a neat control scheme that resembled PC mouse and keyboard controls, where you'd use the D-pad to move and the touchscreen to aim and look around. And the cool thing was, this control scheme could be flipped for lefties, including our boy Matt in Japan, okay?
Yeah.
And you'd use the face buttons to move, which I think was pretty cool. So the game also had a pretty good multiplayer mode that could be played online. What, online first-person shooter on your DS? Get out of town.
Yeah, that was pretty nuts for the main game. I don't think First Hunt went online because I don't think the DS Online stuff was out then. But what was really cool about First Hunt and what sort of sold me on it, even though it turned out to be not a great game, was the wrist strap that came with the original like fatty DS had this like thumb thing, like so you could wrap around your wrist, but it also had a little thumb thing with like a plastic disc on it that you could put on the screen, the touch screen, so you could use that to aim or to move if you were playing like Mario 64 DS where the touch screen is used kind of like a joystick. You could use it sort of like a joystick, which is kind of nice. I mean, it was a cool idea. I don't think it worked that well, but
yeah,
it was
but
kind of neat.
we're all down for new experimentation on this podcast with video games. I think we can all agree it's a great thing. The other game, well, one of the many games that Matt mentions is Metroid Prime Pinball. And the DS Rumble Pack was included with this game. It was a neat pinball game where you would essentially play through the events of the first Metroid Prime pinball style. So
I think that's such an interesting... I don't want to say it's a trend because I feel like it's been happening for decades, but it's just like there will be a franchise that gets sort of popular and the game company will just go, you know what this franchise needs? A pinball game. And so you get like Mario Pinball, Metroid Pinball, you get like Pokemon Pinball. This is really a Nintendo thing, I'm starting to realize.
They're like, we just need a lot of pinball games because there's so much pinball to do, you know?
Yep.
Never too much pinball. You can never have too much of it. So Matt also mentions that there were a bunch of sequels to Game Boy Advance series, including my personal favorites, Advance Wars Dual Strike, Advance Wars Days of Ruin, Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, I think I said that right, and then finally Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2. So they had those on there. So a lot of sequels to really good games. Like we mentioned Advance Wars being one of my personal favorites. So I should go back and get those games because I can play them on my 2DS, and I might do that. So that's exciting. WarioWare Touched is another game. It was a follow-up to WarioWare Inked Mega Micro Games. This was an early release that showcased the DS capabilities with mini-games that used both screens. So you could use the touchscreen and the microphone, and you could do all sorts of fun, crazy games like Shake the Soda Pop, I'm sure, as we mentioned before. So the next game on there is Feel the Magic, XY and XX. And this was a launch game that gave a taste of what the DS was capable of. In this game, the player is trying to win over the girl of his dreams through a series of bizarre mini-games similar to WarioWare while being cheered on by a group of men wearing rabbit ears. Totally normal. Just a totally normal situation like everyday life and dating. And
that sounds so boring. It sounds just like real life.
Yeah, I know. Why would you even play it? Oh, man. So the game was noteworthy because it incorporated a lot of the DS features, including the touchscreen and the microphone to complete these mini games. It was like the preview version of WarioWare Touched, which was released a couple months later. That's what Matt says. I love that. It's so weird. You're going to get the girl of your dreams by winning a series of mini games. It's like Scott Pilgrim Must Die. It's like you got to, fight the ex-boyfriends and girlfriends or whatever. So, Rhythm Heaven. This is the second in the Rhythm Heaven series. The first came out on Game Boy Advance in Japan only, and this is a series of rhythm-based mini-games with catchy tunes and goofy visuals. This series also has games on the Wii and 3DS. So I picture it kind of being like Guitar Hero, but it's not guitar, you know what I mean? But you're doing like the same kind of timed-out hitting buttons thing.
But does it have the hand cramp
Hero
accessory?
I don't think it's the hand cramp hero accessory, no. So why even buy it?
That's going to be a no from me, dog.
If my hand's not going to cramp because of how difficult it is, why would I even play this game? Golden Sun, Dark Dawn, and it is a sequel to Matt Says is my favorite Game Boy Advance game, Golden Sun. And this was actually the third game in the series following Golden Sun, The Lost Age, which I never played.
I like how you don't confirm that was your favorite GBA game. You're like, Matt says it's my favorite GBA game.
Oh, well,
you're just like, I'm just going to go with that.
It was my favorite GBA game, so Matt's right. I guess I'm trying to, I'm reading his email and I'm trying to phrase it as I go along correctly. What we're learning is I can't work on the fly, apparently, but I'm doing the best I can. Okay, so Golden Sun, Dark Dawn, definitely going to get that. Matt, it is my favorite game. You are correct. Matt, you know me so well. It's so weird you know me so well and you're so far away, He's all the way in Japan. But there were also some remakes of the Dragon Quest games, or Dragon Warrior as they were known in North America. And these were very traditional JRPGs that ran alongside Final Fantasy. And while Final Fantasy would gradually experiment and spiral out with different battle systems, Materia, Triple Triad, and other stuff that would be hit or miss, Dragon Quest played it safe and had a very consistent level of quality. And the Dragon Quest games also had fun subtitles. And here are the games on that, and Matt lists the subtitles here. Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen. Ooh, that sounds pretty hardcore. You know what I mean? Dragon Quest V, Hand of the Heavenly Bride. It sounds so heavy-handed. And many consider that to be the best game in the series. Dragon Quest VI, Realms of Revelation. It's like you have to have an alliteration separated by the word of and the, and then you got a Dragon Quest title.
Yeah.
My
brother played all these games. He's a big Dragon Quest fan, and he spent a lot of time playing every release of every Dragon Quest game on the DS, I'm pretty sure.
It seems like the kind of game I should have played because it just seems like a solid RPG. You know what I mean?
They really are, and I think Matt's right. It's just like consistent quality, whereas Final Fantasy is kind of up or down.
Yeah. So
hot and cold.
Also, he puts a star next to Hand of the Heavenly Bride and Realms of Revelation because those DS titles were the first time they were officially localized in North America. Because before, Japan only.
Kind of like Final Fantasy 3 on the DS.
Oh, yeah. We got more Dragon Quest games. You ready? Dragon Quest 9, Sentinels of the Starry Skies. Again, not joking. It's just alliteration separated by of and the. The first time, but I'm into it. The first time that a brand new main numbered entry would release on a handheld system. So this is not a port. This is straight up a new game for DS. And this was also the first time that the series stopped using random encounters, and you'd be able to see the enemies in the world and choose whether or not to fight them, which I think we can all agree is something that every RPG needs.
Yeah, because the trend of RPGs moving towards that is definitely very welcome. I'm playing World of Final Fantasy right now, which still has the old style, and man, I just wish it didn't.
Yeah, the random battles thing, even just in Pokemon and stuff, when you're like, I just want to get through this grass without a stupid Pidgey jumping up and trying to mess me up, okay?
Yep.
All right. Dragon Quest Monsters, Joker 1 and 2, and these were part of the Monsters spin-off series and played very similar to Pokemon. So they were like Pokemon games, but in the Dragon Quest universe.
There was a group of people in my elementary school when Pokemon was all the rage, who swore by Dragon Warrior Monsters, and they would only play that, and they were just convinced that it was way better than Pokemon. I'm not sure they were right, but I just remember them feeling so superior and smug.
Do you think they still are like that? Do you think that's the hill they died on?
I don't know. That's a great question.
They're still to this day, they're just Dragon Quest Monsters, man, no idea. It's the best.
It's so much better.
I mean, it's not like, I mean, this is in no comparison, by the way, to Jaybird versus Qbert, because we all know Jaybird's the best. All right.
Yeah,
So,
obviously.
Obviously. We know
that's
that. So there's also a couple Kingdom Hearts games that came out on DS. Kingdom Hearts 358/2 days. I don't know how
so the way you're
that.
supposed to say that, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I think I have this right, and it doesn't make any sense. The way you're supposed to say that is Kingdom Hearts 358 days over 2. That is the proper pronunciation of that game.
358 days.
It's off the top of my head. Maybe I'm making that up, but I'm pretty sure it's 358 days over 2.
Man, that's like some real, like, you got to read things like you'd read things math in high school. 358 over 2. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
And the other one is called Kingdom Hearts Recoded.
That one's a port of like a cell phone game, like not mobile game in the sense of like I played an iPhone game, which is very different from like I played a flip phone game. I'm pretty sure it was like a Japanese flip phone game.
Oh, really? It was just like Snake, but with Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, it was Kingdom Hearts Snake. It's really
that's
what
I picture. All right. The next game is called Meteos, and this was developed by Q Games, and they're the makers of Rez and Lumines. I think Luminous is correct. I think that's right.
I also think Luminous is correct.
Yeah. And this was a match 3 puzzle game where you'd use the touchscreen and stylus to line up blocks and would launch them into the top screen by sliding the stylus up. The game got a sequel called Meteos Disney Magic, because you know what you need when you have a game? You need to throw a little Disney Magic in there. That's what you need.
That's right.
Okay. Oh, this next game I thought was really exciting. Super Princess Peach. It's a platformer starring Princess Peach. And you must go and rescue Mario for once. I like that.
All right.
Let's switch things up. Also, there was a game, I think it was Super Mario World for Game Boy Advance, that version that I have, where you can play as Princess Peach. And I'm pretty sure her like dress makes it so you float down.
Oh, yeah. That's Super Mario Advance, the first Super Mario Advance, which is a remake of Super Mario Brothers 2. The US version of Super Mario Brothers.
Okay,
2.
That's the one I had then. But I played that, and I was a big fan. I'm a big fan of using Princess Peach. I think they all should have, like, Luigi can jump a little higher, Toad's super fast. I'm into it.
Yep.
I'm into all that. Great game. Great idea. Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood, which was a turn-based RPG with Sonic the Hedgehog characters that was developed by BioWare. Oh. This blew my mind. How have I never heard of this?
I remember being so excited for this game. I think when it came out, it got like kind of middling, mediocre reviews, which is really strange because it was BioWare, and it was like when BioWare was good too.
Yeah.
But I just remember like getting kind of mediocre reviews, and I was like, oh, and I didn't get it.
All right. This last one is a Matt in Japan hot take. I have to say that. He put hashtag hot take in this.
Hot take.
Yeah. So lastly, Matt's personal favorite DS game is Tetris DS, and he says this is probably the best Tetris game ever, and it had a lot of cool modes and visuals based off of 8-bit Nintendo games. It was the first multiplayer mode with Mario Kart-style power-ups, where if you cleared a line that had glowing question mark block, you'd get an item like a Koopa shell, banana, or mushroom that would either help you or hurt your opponents, and the best part about the game was it featured 10-person local multiplayer with only one cartridge.
Whoa.
Players who didn't own the game could temporarily download it from their friend using the DS's download play feature. It also supported 4-person online multiplayer. 10 people on one cartridge. That is insanity.
This is like the pre-Tetris 99.
Yeah, I love this. I love
wish
it
they
so
would
much.
add those power-ups to Tetris 99. That sounds awesome.
I still haven't played Tetris 99. I need to get on that.
So
I need to get
fun.
on that train. I need to get on that train. Apparently, the game was developed under an unusual sub-license agreement that ended abruptly, and so it had a low print run and is pretty rare. So for funsies, he told me to look up the price of a copy of Tetris DS on Amazon or eBay. And to add some surprise, I didn't want to do it until we were on air. Okay.
Some intrigue here.
So I just looked it up on Amazon. Give me a guess. How much do you think Tetris and I'm going to say this is new. This is the new price of the game for Tetris DS.
For a brand new, like, unopened copy, I'm going to say $268.
Dude, it's $200. It's $199.99. But you have to pay $5 for shipping. Oh, man. That would make it or break it for me. I'm like, I have $200.
Yeah.
I don't have $205. A used copy, I mean, if you get a used copy on Amazon, minimum it's still $40. So yeah, it's definitely rare. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And you know what I'm going to look at right now because I want to know is this is going to make me mad, I think. Remember when I told you that I bought the Resident Evil game for DS?
Yeah.
And I got rid of it? Guess how much that is new right now?
Oh, no. Is it more or less than Tetris DS?
It's less than that, but it's still a significant amount of money.
$89.
$120.
Whoo! Wow.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about it is, in Amazon, when it shows you, like, they have used copies, they don't. This is the only way you can buy it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just, there's no used copies of this game, according to this, on at all. And I sold that Resident Evil 2, I think, to the person with my DS for like $40 or something like that. It was not a good deal. I goofed, team. I goofed. So
it's all right. We've all been there.
Yeah, but I just thought that was really interesting. Matt, thank you so much for your email. That's great. We knew we missed a lot because there's just so many games,
Yeah.
and we make the lists and we try to go through and find the games, and we always miss some. And Matt in Japan is a true hero. Hero of the podcast. That's what I'm going to call him from now on. Hero of the podcast, Matt in Japan. And now, Tyler, we get to talk about the PlayStation Portable.
All right. I'm excited because I had a PlayStation Portable. My brother got one as soon as they came out. There was a period of time where my brother bought every single portable console as soon as it came out. And that period of time lasted from about 2004 to whenever the 3DS came out. Because he got
know
that
what
on
it sounds
day one,
like
too.
to me? It sounds like your brother's a pretty cool guy. That's what we just
He
learned.
is a pretty cool guy.
Pretty cool guy. Tyler's
He
brother.
showed
but
me
no...
Tetris 99 also. So
so he's a really cool guy.
Yeah, he's way up there. So anyway, he got a PlayStation Portable as soon as it came out. I got mine after they slimmed it down in a little bit, which we'll probably talk about next episode. But it's important, I think, when we're talking about the PSP to frame it in terms of the company that made it. Sony, as an electronics company, has often disrupted industries with portable products. So here's a brief history of portable Sony devices. 1979. The original, the Walkman. This was the first successful portable music listening device. It played tapes, and it featured the now ubiquitous, no longer ubiquitous, headphone jack. This was kind of a cool thing when it came out because at the time, music was a sort of thing that people listened to music by themselves, but it was also it wasn't a intensely personal thing the way that it could be with a cassette player, because you could be in a room with your headphones on and nobody else is listening to your music, and that's how personal that device was.
I had a Walkman. I still have my Walkman. It's in storage. I know exactly where it is. It has a vinyl silver case that goes around the actual Walkman.
Wow.
I got it from my grandma, and I even have the original headphones. I think it's really cool. Real into it.
What tape do you think is still in there?
If based on the cassette tapes I owned, I'm gonna guess it's Beatles Abbey Road.
That's a solid tape to leave in your Walkman.
That was my first ever piece of music I ever bought, was Beatles Abbey Road on cassette. Now, my first CD I ever bought was Eiffel 65's Europop. So
Yes,
not
I
as
love
cool.
that album. That album's so good. I'll still listen to that album.
It's so good. But yeah, I just thought it was funny. I definitely had a Walkman, and I definitely have the next portable item that Sony made that you're going to talk about.
Yep. They made the Discman, which was the same thing as a Walkman, but it was a CD player. And this was in 1984, so only 5 years after the first Walkman. Sony's got CDs in your, I don't want to say in your pocket because CDs are not really pocket-sized, but they definitely sound better than tapes. I had a Discman. I'm sure it wasn't the original Discman, but I had one from the late 90s probably, and it skipped. If you even looked at it wrong, it would skip.
Oh, yeah. The favorite part about those is mine was anti-skip technology, and it was just, if you move it an inch, it's going to skip. There's no way they can stop that.
Yep. They also had their fair share of misses. Those were their big disruptive things, but they also had the mini disc player, which was supposed to be the future of music in the early 90s. It was kind of had the sound quality of a CD and the size of a cassette tape, and it just never really caught on outside of Japan, and they eventually got superseded by MP3 players. And Sony's made a lot of MP3 devices and stuff, but yeah, the Walkman and the Discman were a big deal.
Dude, my buddy, one of my best friends as a kid in Alaska, had a mini disc player, and he swore by it because he would put whatever he wanted on his mini discs, like he'd move the
Yeah.
MP3 files over, and he had one that was just all parody songs, like old things ripped from South Park or ripped from like old like radio shows, like really bad radio parodies, and he just loved it, and it was so funny to me. He's like, this is the future, man. And then it was a very, very short-lived, it was like a year, I think. And I was like, you still have your mini disc player? He's like, yeah, it's just been a drawer this whole time.
Yeah, I had a buddy in like high school also who was like, yes, mini disc player, this is the greatest thing ever. And I remember seeing it and being like, this is pretty cool. But then it was like, that was around the time MP3 players were really picking up steam, and it was clear one of those technologies was better than the other. What I didn't know was that the mini disc format came out in the early 90s. So like it wasn't just like late to market at the wrong time. It had been around for a while.
Wow. I just think MP3 players took off because you had iPods and all that stuff later down the line, but those really small, really cheap MP3 players that were like off-brand, that could hold like 100 songs.
Yep.
That's what everyone got, like those $40 ones or whatever. It just became so cheap so quick.
Yeah.
It was mind-boggling.
Yeah, and then as soon as their memory capacity became basically more than a CD, that's when it was like, oh yes, this is definitely worth it. And then they got so much more than a CD. They could carry all your songs around. But we're not here to talk about music players, even though Sony has made a lot of great ones. We're here to talk about the PlayStation Portable. So the reason I want to talk about all that stuff, though, is it's important to set that backdrop because Sony had some experience in successful portable adaptations of technology that was once too large to fit in a pocket. So why not try it with the PlayStation? Nintendo was seeing great success in this area, and they were using inferior hardware, so Sony was like, why not just beat them in specs and let the games come later?
Ooh, interesting strategy.
So they're like, yeah, let's make a portable PlayStation, but let's rewind one more time because I want to talk about the sort of prototype for a portable Sony product, the Pocket Station.
I'd never heard of this.
Station. Yeah, well, that's because it was released only in Japan in the late 90s, and it sold actually really well there, like hotcakes, like gangbusters, as usual. They couldn't keep up with demand. It was a small, kind of memory card-sized device with 5 buttons on the front, like 4 sort of directional buttons, and then 1 just other button for, I don't know, things. It had a monochrome LCD display, and it was designed to play small, bite-sized games that would be transferred to it from full PlayStation games. So does that sound kind of familiar? Ooh. It's just like the VMUs that Sega used in the Dreamcast, which had launched a few months earlier in Japan.
Ooh, Sega was a trendsetter. Look at you,
they sure
Sega.
Were.
I see.
Yeah. So while they had originally intended for a worldwide release of the Pocket Station, ultimately Sony decided to can it. They cited manufacturing concerns when they were like, we can't even meet demand in Japan. Why would we release it anywhere else? And then they just never fixed that, I guess. So it seems like maybe they probably decided to pivot away from a portable strategy in the late 90s, and that was like kind of a convenient excuse. But fun fact, the Pocket Station was revived for the PlayStation Vita in Japan, allowing games that had been available for the Pocket Station to be played on Japanese PS Vitas.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah, the Vita, would that be included in our rule of history? Have that been suspended? The Vita?
I think it only went out of manufacturing like less than a year ago.
Okay. So we can wait a little bit before we do the Vita, but all right.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're into the PlayStation Portable. It's been a few years since the release and subsequent canning of the Pocket Station, and with the success of the Game Boy Advance, it's pretty clear the portable market is untapped for Sony and the PlayStation brand. So the PS2 at this time selling like hotcakes, selling like gangbusters, so it made sense for them to focus on this because they had the console scene on lock. So they had tons of experience making portable devices, and at E3 in 2003, where the system was unveiled, Sony CEO Ken Kutaragi called the device the Walkman of the 21st century, which shows you where their head was at the time. Like they really wanted this to be the center of your like digital media consumption life.
Well, that was like, it's kind of this whole thing in reading this kind of reminded me of how Xbox is like, we're going to take over your living room with the Xbox One and it's going to do everything. And Sony was like, we're going to take over just you walking around and it's going to play games and you can watch movies and you can listen to music. Like they wanted it to do everything. They wanted it to be a cell phone. That's what they wanted it to be.
That's what they wanted it to be, yeah.
Yeah.
But we hadn't quite figured that part out in 2003. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. But But at E3 in May of 2003, they showed off the PlayStation Portable. Here are the specs. A widescreen.
Specs.
Yeah, me too. A widescreen, 4.3 inch, 16 by 9 ratio, 480 by 272 backlit color LCD screen. You'll notice that's a 16 by 9 ratio, which is the ratio at which most home movies are released. We'll get to that.
Interesting.
Yep. A 32-bit MIPS processor, 32 megabytes of RAM. It had the capability for real 3D graphics on a level that was better than the DS's capabilities. It had, this is a weird thing for them to tout, but it had A-track sound format support, which was Sony's proprietary digital sound format. I don't know why that's a selling point, because it shouldn't be, but Sony does stuff like that all the time where they're like, we have this superior digital format. And you're like, I don't care. Does it sound good? Fine.
And you're like, neat, Sony. Thanks for sharing it. No one asked.
Yep. The games came on what they were calling universal media discs, which is like a caddy-based optical disc format. So they were optical. They were basically not, they weren't CDs. They were probably more closely related to DVDs in technology, but they weren't, they were in like a plastic shell that you put in, kind of like how a floppy disk, you know, how when you pull back the like metal thing on a floppy disk, you can see the actual magnetic thing underneath.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of how UMDs were. They had like an opening in the plastic where the PSP would read the games, but it would keep them from getting scratched because this is a portable system and people can't be trusted with their portable
Also,
CDs.
would that help it prevent from skipping?
Probably not. I don't think that was as big of an issue with the PSP just because of the way it wasn't just reading the data directly. Like the way, like Discman skips because it's reading data straight from the CD to your ears, and if it gets like messed up at any point along the way, it skips. Whereas the PSP would just like, that would probably result in like a longer loading time if it were to skip.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But yeah, it was a portable device that ran off optical discs, which is something that you don't hear of too often, especially in the gaming world. These UMDs stored 1.8 gigabytes, which is huge for the time, and that's larger than the GameCube was. And those discs were even smaller. So,
I mean, you don't hear about that until you hear about the Myler Jaybird Portable we're coming out with next year.
Yeah, that's way too big for 1.8 gigabytes.
Yeah,
it'll never fit.
Yeah, it's at 4K graphics, so
yeah, it's gonna be pretty crazy. So
native 4K, 90 frames a second. It's just going crazy.
Yeah. They would also release movies in this format, which was kind of neat. Like the whole idea was that you would buy UMD movies and then watch them on your PSP, and it would be like having a DVD player in your pocket. Only you had to buy your movies twice, which was good for Sony because they wanted you to buy your movies twice.
They're like, buy the first Fantastic Four movie twice. I'm trying to think of movies that are around this time period. I feel like
Spider-Man.
That's right.
So Spider-Man 2 is the movie they were pushing at the time. So that's the one. That's the one to get if you want to be an authentic PlayStation Portable movie user, if you're cosplaying.
Oh, okay. If you could have cosplayed that at Comic-Con next
cosplaying
year.
as a PlayStation Portable.
We get to a point where the comic book convention circuit is so meta that people start like cosplaying as people going to that comic book convention 10 years ago. I'm actually cosplaying as a Halo fan from early 2000s that dressed up as Master Chief.
It's like that explains why my costume's so bad, because it's not actually bad. It's actually really authentic.
It's just super authentic.
Yeah. The PSP also had a different format for storing data, and that was the Memory Stick Pro Duo. And it's just classic Sony in the 2000s because they put this memory stick format in everything they made. They couldn't just use a normal flash memory format like SD cards or MMC cards or like smart media cards, or I'm trying to think of what else was big in the early 2000s. Compact flash, I guess. They had to use their own proprietary format, which of course cost more. So they used the Memory Stick Pro Duo, which was building on the memory stick technology that they'd been hawking since 1998. Pro Duo cards were a little bit smaller, and they were, of course, more expensive. But the cards themselves were backward compatible with other Sony gadgets. So if you had a Sony digital camera or something like that, the idea was you could use these Pro Duo sticks in all of your Sony things. So buy more Sony stuff, and you'll buy fewer memory cards. See how that works?
Oh, so they just wanted you to become a Sony person.
That's right.
All
they
Sony
wanted you
all
to be
the time.
trapped in their ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yep. The last thing that was pretty notable about the PlayStation Portable was its full 802.11b Wi-Fi connectivity for both local multiplayer and online multiplayer, which is the same technology that the DS used. They were not compatible with each other. in any sense of the word.
That's upsetting. Although, I mean, we talk about that all the time, but like cross-platform play, it's coming. It's going to be here someday. But when they all get along, that's the question. When are they going to get along?
That's right. And then we'll go back in time and they'll make the DS and the PSP cross-compatible.
Mm-hmm. They'll be like, finally, after 30 years.
Yep. So software-wise, they promised high-quality games as well as an all-encompassing media experience. They wanted the PSP to be your games machine, your music player, your movie player. It was an all-in-one system at the time, and to me, a 14-year-old, that was pretty neat. I was kind of into this. I was like, yes, I want to watch movies on my PSP. I want to listen to music on my PSP, and we'll play games and do all this stuff. It didn't really end up panning out that well, but you're right. They wanted it to do all the things that your cell phone does now, but without the cell phone. So it was a little bit of a harder sell.
Yeah. People loved it though. I remember people loving the system.
Yeah,
like
there was a subset of people, like probably the crew that I rolled with, that was like, that wanted this kind of stuff, that wanted like the all-in-one thing that did everything. And this was a pretty neat way to do that. It had pretty cool controls. It was laid out kind of similar to a Game Boy Advance with like your directional pads on the left side and your like face buttons on the right side with the screen in the middle. So it felt like a Game Boy Advance kind of, but the screen was way bigger, higher quality, backlit, all that kind of stuff. You had your PlayStation D-pad on the left with your classic PlayStation face buttons on the right, and you had an L and R button on the top. Only one of each though, so no L2, no R2. The bottom of the display had start and select buttons. It had also shortcuts to home, movies, and like music areas. Like the movies and music buttons, I don't think I ever used. And then it also had a button for like adjusting the display brightness, which I used sometimes. But the talk at the time for the PlayStation Portable was connectivity. Sony really, really wanted this to be a standalone device that integrated into your Sony lifestyle. So they wanted you to watch your Sony movies and listen to your Sony music and play your Sony PSP games on your PSP. As much as possible, they also wanted you to be able to connect with the home consoles. So the PS2 at the time had some of the games had basic PlayStation Portable connectivity, but the PS3 would gain a lot more PSP connectivity features a couple years later. So in 2003, this looked like it could be the thing to beat Nintendo's stranglehold on the portable market. If you took a look at the specs and you're going, yeah, these specs are better than a Game Boy or than a DS, I guess, because the DS hadn't launched yet by the time they were announcing it. So this was definitely looking like it could compete with the Game Boy for sure. So,
oh man,
that's kind of the history leading up to it.
They're throwing it down.
Yep, they're throwing it down. The PSP launched in Japan on December 12th, 2004, only a few weeks after the launch of the Nintendo DS. It would take a few more months for it to hit North American shores on March 24th, 2005. That's great and all, but did it have games? The answer is yes. It had 18 of them, to be exact, in North America when it launched. Those games are, we'll go into more detail on the next episode of like PSP games, but they came out with Ape Escape on the Loose, Darkstalkers Chronicle, The Chaos Tower, Dynasty Warriors, Gretzky NHL, Luminous. Did we decide that was how we were going to call that one?
I think that's what we're going to call that one from now on. Yeah, that's how we're pronouncing it.
Yep. Metal Gear Acid, NBA game, Need for Speed Underground Rivals, NFL Street 2 Unleashed, Ridge Racer, Spider-Man 2. Tiger Woods PGA Tour, Tony Hawk's Underground 2 Remix Edition, Twisted Metal, Head On, Untold Legends, Brotherhood of the Blade, Wipeout Pure, World Tour Soccer. That's it. That's all of them. And World Tour Soccer Challenge Edition, which is apparently a separate game. I don't know.
You know, if you couldn't get enough World Tour Soccer, you got to get that Challenge Edition to show everyone how cool you are.
That's right. So there were a few more games that came out in the launch window as well. So like within a few weeks of the launch day. So the PSP was no Nintendo 2 Games McGee 64. That was I always think about
my favorite nickname for the N64 right now. Old Nintendo 2 Games McGee 64.
Yeah. So those games are not too shabby. I can point to Luminous is probably my favorite puzzler game of all time. I come back to that all the time. Metal Gear Acid was an interesting take on the Metal Gear Solid franchise. And Spider-Man 2 was like a pretty good portable version of the greatest Spider-Man game up until the newest Insomniac game. It was like an open world Spider-Man thing. It worked really well on the PSP. And then Tony Hawk's Underground 2 Remix is a great Tony Hawk game. Everybody, you got to have a Tony Hawk game.
Yeah, you have to have a Tony Hawk game, especially on a I feel like PlayStation really, like when people think Tony Hawk, they probably played it on a PlayStation. I played mine on 64, but I felt like I was the outlier when I talked to my friends about it. You know. So,
yeah, you definitely were.
I was the outlier.
Yeah. So that list doesn't have any like clear system sellers like, oh, this is the game. Like how you could point to like Super Mario 64 DS as being like, oh, this is clearly the game you need to get when you buy your DS. There weren't any games like that for the PSP, in my opinion, but it had enough good games that eventually it became this like, yeah, you should probably get one because there's a lot of great games on here.
Yeah.
So,
and we're gonna go more.
That's all, I guess, for PSP history this time. We'll talk a little bit more next time.
Yeah, because I think next time we're going to talk about the homebrew scene for the PSP, right? Because that was pretty cool. And then we're going to go through some games, and then I'm sure we'll forget some games, and then Matt will let us know what we forget.
Yeah.
I love this thing we got going on here. This is good because I like to be thorough, and I feel like we're more thorough. So, Tyler, what have you been playing this week?
I have been playing all the same things that I've been playing as of last week. Still rolling through World of Final Fantasy. Jumped back into Destiny after taking a week off to do some of the Revelry stuff. And
with me,
we've been duoing some Revelry. That's been nice. That's basically it at this point. Like taking a look around as if something is going to jump out to me, and I don't think anything is.
I've been on the road this whole time for the last 2 weeks, dear listener. If you didn't realize it, I'm in Kansas right now. The last show was yesterday, so I'm flying home in about 4 hours is when I leave Kansas, and I am so excited to go home and play some other games because I've only had Destiny really this whole time, and I bought Skyrim right before I left. I think I mentioned that Skyrim Special Edition, and I was having a lot of fun just like playing that for like an hour or two a day, just really enjoying myself. And man, I want to go back to it so bad. I want to play my Skyrim character. It was really fun. I just felt like I want 100% achievements that game, Skyrim Special Edition, and I feel like it's very doable. On one character.
I haven't seen those achievements. Are they pretty gnarly?
A lot of them are like just complete this whole branch of a quest line, complete this whole branch of a quest line. This one that's kind of weird where you have to get like a 1,000 gold bounty in every single hold of Skyrim. So it's like you got to save
like
your
there's
game.
Just a lot of
crime, pretty much.
Yeah.
You got to just like murder a bunch of guards and then escape, and then go somewhere else and murder a bunch of guards and escape, and then murder a bunch of guards. I did it on a Xbox 360 when I played the game, so I know how to do it. But I was just like, it's a little tedious. It's a lot like you save your game and then you're like, I'm gonna go get this achievement real quick, and then I'm gonna go back to the save game I had where I'm not in jail on anywhere. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. But I want to play that. I am gonna do my plan today. It's a pretty awesome flight home. Okay, it's 4 hours long, I think, my flight, and I plan to play Pokemon on my DS while listening to some new music I downloaded that I'm really excited to listen to. Yeah, have you heard of Lizzo?
I have not.
Lizzo. She's great. Super. I actually saw her at this isn't a music podcast, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I saw her at a festival I did 3 years ago for comedy, and now she's like blown up, and I feel really cool. Like I saw her first. I had this is the first I've ever had that feeling of being like I saw this cool artist first. So now I'm gonna listen to her album while I fly home, and I'm gonna play Pokemon while I do it, and it's gonna be great. I think it's gonna be great. Little night
very
flight.
Exciting.
I'm very excited. So yeah, next week hopefully we'll have some new games and stuff I'm gonna play. I do have some stuff I think in my Steam library that I was gonna pick up next week, just kind of try out. So I'll have more to talk about on the what I've played front next week, I think. But Tyler, I think that's it for the day. So next week we'll go into part 2 of the PSP history, do some games. Thank you once again to Matt in Japan. We also have 19 ratings now on our thing. I haven't checked it today, but that was what it was, I think, last time I checked a couple days ago. So thank you, whoever's rated us and reviewed us and subscribed. That means the world to us. It helps us out a lot. In fact,
smash that like button, ring the notifications bell.
Yeah,
Just
right.
kidding. We don't have a YouTube channel.
Hey, what you doing today, listener? I don't know how they say it. That just sounds right? But I thank you so much because it really does help us a lot, and it means the world. I'm just double checking one more time real quick to see if we got. Nope, it's yep, it's still there. So yeah, thank you whoever's rated us and reviewed us. It means the world, and That's it. Oh, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can follow Tyler at SneakerElf, ELPH on Twitter. You can follow me at MeColetta. You can send us a fax if you find a fax number that's good for us. I don't have one.
Just send a fax and maybe it'll get to us.
Yeah, you could go out and you can buy Spider-Man 2 for your PSP, and Tyler and I will feel it in the air, and we'll know that you're with us. That's what it will be. So that's what we'll do. Tyler, do you want to say bye to the listener real quick before we go?
Yeah, bye.